3 years passed after the quarantine began. The Galactic Council had built a wall of weapons around human space. Thousands of automated defense platforms floated in the darkness between stars. Each one was powerful enough to destroy any ship that tried to cross the boundary. The Council believed this wall would keep humanity trapped until they destroyed themselves. They expected humans to panic. They expected wars to break out over the limited resources inside the quarantine zone. They expected humanity to prove that the Category 5 classification was correct. They were very disappointed. In a converted aircraft hangar in the New Mexico desert, Dr. Samuel Price stared at something impossible. The holographic display in front of him showed the complete design for a new kind of engine. Not the engines that Council ships used, which required special gates and corridors through hyperspace. This was something different. This was an engine that could fold space itself, allowing a ship to travel anywhere without permission from anyone. "Run the calculations again," Samuel said. He was 45 years old, with messy brown hair and glasses that he kept pushing up his nose. He had been working on this project for 3 years, without sleep, without rest, without hope. Now hope was flooding back so fast that he was afraid to believe it. Dr. Michelle Torres, his lead physicist, shook her head. She looked as exhausted as he felt, with dark circles under her eyes and coffee stains on her lab coat. "I've run them 50 times, Sam. The math works." "It actually works. That's impossible." The Council said independent faster than light travel was impossible. The Council was wrong. Michelle smiled for the first time in months. Or maybe they just didn't want anyone else to figure it out. Director Nina Blackwell watched from the back of the room. She was 61 years old, appointed by the United Earth government to oversee Project Bootstrap. Her job was to find ways for humanity to survive without access to galactic trade routes. She had expected to spend decades on small improvements and minor victories. She had not expected this. "How long until we can build a working prototype?" she asked. Samuel ran his hands through his hair, thinking quickly. 18 months if we work around the clock. Maybe 12 if we pull resources from other programs. You have 8 months. I'll get you whatever you need. People, money, materials. Name it, and it's yours. Samuel blinked. 8 months? That's not realistic. Neither is folding space, Nina replied. But here we are. The Council gave us a death sentence. You just gave us a chance at life. Don't waste it. While scientists worked on new technology, soldiers prepared for war. Orbital shipyards that had once built peaceful transport vessels now produced weapons. Engineers who had designed luxury spacecraft now built warships. Admiral Catherine Shaw commanded the effort from a space station hidden in the asteroid belt. She spent her days reviewing designs, approving construction schedules, and training officers who had never expected to fight anyone except other humans. Current production gives us 50 combat vessels this year, reported General Marcus Webb during their daily meeting. He was a large man with a shaved head and a voice like gravel. Another 100 next year if we maintain this pace. It's not enough, said Admiral Chun Wei, representing the Pacific Alliance fleet. He was slim and precise, with a reputation for caution. Council forces number in the millions. We're not trying to match their numbers, Catherine said. We're trying to survive long enough to find another way. What other way? They have us surrounded. They have better technology. They have more ships, more resources, more everything. Catherine pulled up a star map on the main display. It showed the positions of hundreds of alien species, each one marked with symbols indicating their relationship with the Council. Look at this map, she said. What do you see? Marcus studied it for a moment. I see a lot of enemies. Look closer. See these species here? The Quellan abstained from the vote against us. They're one of the founding members of the Council, but they didn't vote yes. Why? Maybe they just didn't care. Maybe. Or maybe they had doubts. Catherine pointed to another group of stars. These are the Drexy. They've been denied access to resources they need to survive. The Council keeps promising to help them, but nothing ever changes. And here, the Morthacs. They've been fighting the Valaxians over territory for centuries. The Council always sides with the Valaxians. Chun Wei leaned forward, understanding beginning to show on his face. You think the Council has enemies. I think the Council has been in power for 60,000 years. That's a long time to make promises and break them. A long time to build resentment. Catherine's eyes were cold and calculating. We don't need to defeat the Council in battle. We need to find the cracks in their alliance and make them wider. That's a dangerous game. If the Council finds out we're trying to turn their members against them, they'll send everything they have to destroy us. They already want to destroy us? At least this way, we have a chance. The work continued. Scientists developed new weapons and new defenses. Soldiers trained for battles against enemies they had never seen. Diplomats studied alien cultures, looking for any sign of sympathy or opportunity. On Earth, the changes were even more dramatic. Nations that had been rivals for centuries now worked together. Old hatreds were set aside. Old borders became meaningless. When the entire planet faced extinction, petty differences stopped mattering. Schools taught alien languages to children who would grow up to be diplomats or spies. Factories that had made consumer goods now produced military equipment. Churches, mosques, and temples prayed for deliverance while also volunteering their members for defense training. The quarantine had been meant to divide and weaken humanity. Instead, it united them as nothing else could have. 6 months after Project Bootstrap began, the first prototype engine was activated. Dr. Samuel Price held his breath as the device powered up. If his calculations were wrong, the resulting explosion might take out half of New Mexico. The engine hummed. Space around it seemed to shimmer and twist. For a moment, reality itself looked like a reflection in disturbed water. Then it stabilized. The engine was working. Michelle Torres laughed out loud, a sound of pure relief and joy. Around them, scientists were hugging each other, some of them crying. Samuel just stared at the engine. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." Director Nina Blackwell was already on her communication device, calling Admiral Shaw. "We have a working FTL drive," she reported. The Council's quarantine just became obsolete. On her space station, Catherine received the news with a small smile. "Good. Now the real work begins." "What do you mean?" "Having a way out is only the first step. Now we need to find friends." She looked at the star map of the thousands of species who had condemned humanity. "And I know exactly where to start looking." The Quellan had abstained from the vote. It was a small thing, but in politics, small things often mattered most. Someone in that ancient species had shown mercy, or at least thought it was time to find out why. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest building ever made by any species in the known universe. It stretched for 3 kilometers in every direction, with walls of black stone that seemed to swallow light. The ceiling was so high that clouds sometimes formed inside the chamber. 412 alien species sent their representatives here to decide the fate of worlds. Ambassador Daniel Cooper stood alone on a small platform in the center of this impossible room. He was 53 years old, with gray hair at his temples and tired lines around his eyes. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Behind him, floating in the air like a ghost, was a holographic image of his home planet. That small blue marble looked very fragile, surrounded by so many aliens, who had already decided they did not like it. Daniel had been preparing for this day for 20 years. His teacher, Ambassador Linda Hayes, had warned him that it might come. She had told him to stay calm no matter what happened. She had told him that humanity's future might depend on how he behaved in this room. He tried to remember her advice as the High Arbiter began to speak. The High Arbiter was called Zixthelian. It was not a creature of flesh and blood, but a being made of living plasma, contained within a magnetic field that gave it a vaguely humanoid shape. Its voice did not come from a mouth, but seemed to emerge from everywhere at once, translated instantly into every language spoken by every species present. The matter before this council concerns the species known as humanity, Zixthelian announced. They come from the planet called Earth, which they also call Sulfury. For 47 of their years, they have asked to join the Galactic Concordat as full members. Daniel kept his face blank. He had learned long ago that aliens watched human expressions very carefully. They found human faces fascinating and disturbing in equal measure. Too much emotion could be seen as weakness. Too little could be seen as deception. The Council has studied all evidence provided by humanity, the High Arbiter continued. We have examined their technology, their art, their biology, and their history. We have reached our decision. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the Vethkai, crystalline beings who communicated through musical vibrations, stopped their constant humming. Every eye, sensor, and perception organ in the room focused on the High Arbiter. Humanity is denied membership in the Galactic Concordat. Daniel felt his heart sink, but he did not move. Rejection was bad, but it was not unexpected. Many species were rejected on their first application. Some waited centuries before being accepted. He could work with rejection, but Zixthelian was not finished. Furthermore, humanity is classified as a Category 5 threat to galactic stability. All member species are forbidden from any contact with Earth or its colony worlds. A quarantine zone of 50 light years will be established around their home system. Any human vessel that crosses this boundary will be destroyed. This ruling takes effect immediately. Now Daniel could not hide his shock. Category 5 was the most dangerous classification possible. It was reserved for species that had destroyed other civilizations, for planet-killing weapons, for cosmic horrors that threatened all life. In 60,000 years of Council history, only 3 species had ever received this classification. 2 of them had been exterminated. The third had destroyed itself. "May I ask," Daniel said, fighting to keep his voice steady, "why this decision was made?" The High Arbiter's plasma form rippled, which might have been annoyance or might have been amusement. With aliens, it was often impossible to tell. Humanity's history shows a love of violence that is unique among known species. You have been at war with yourselves continuously since your earliest civilization. You invented nuclear weapons and used them against your own cities. You are the only species ever to do this. Your entertainment celebrates death. Your stories glorify war. Your evolution favored aggression and cruelty. Many species have fought wars, Daniel replied carefully. None with your joy, said Representative Kethmer of the Valaxian hierarchy. Kethmer was a serpentine creature covered in scales that glowed with bioluminescent light. That light pulsed with colors that Daniel had learned to recognize as contempt. None with your creativity. None who write songs about killing. Daniel wanted to argue. He wanted to tell them about human kindness, about sacrifice, about love. He wanted to explain that the same species that invented nuclear bombs also invented vaccines and art, and music that could make people weep with beauty. But he knew it would not matter. The decision had been made long before he entered this room. The vote was called as a formality. 389 species voted to quarantine humanity. 23 abstained. None voted against. Guards approached Daniel's platform. They were Morthacs, tall beings with 4 arms and faces like insects. They did not touch him, but their meaning was clear. It was time to leave. As Daniel walked the long corridor back to his ship, he noticed something strange. The Quellan delegation was watching him. The Quellan were ancient, one of the founding species of the Council. They looked like giant mantises, with compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Most species avoided looking at humans, as if their Category 5 status might be contagious. But the Quellan watched Daniel with an expression he could not read. One of them, marked with the golden bands of a senior diplomat, moved its head in a small gesture. It might have been nothing. It might have been a nod. Daniel filed this observation away and kept walking. Once he was safely aboard his ship and the airlock was sealed, he activated his secure communication channel. The face of Admiral Catherine Shaw appeared on his screen. She was 60 years old, with silver hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much death to be surprised by anything. "It's done," Daniel said. "They ruled against us. Full quarantine. Category 5 classification." Catherine was silent for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Understood, Ambassador. Come home. We have work to do." "What kind of work?" "The kind we're good at." Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes hardened. "They think they know what we are. They think they can predict what we'll do. They're wrong. The quarantine zone is enforced by automated weapons platforms. Anything that crosses the boundary will be destroyed instantly. We have no ships that can challenge Council technology." "Not yet," Catherine said. "But we're human, Daniel. We adapt. We overcome. We find a way." She paused. "They made a mistake today. They just don't know it yet." The connection ended. Daniel sat alone in his ship as it turned toward the distant light of Earth's sun. Behind him, the Galactic Council celebrated their decision. They believed they had contained a threat. They believed humanity would turn inward, destroy itself, and prove that the Council's judgment had been correct. They did not understand humans at all. On Earth, the news spread within hours. Every nation, every government, every person learned that they had been judged and found wanting by the rest of the universe. There was anger. There was fear. There was despair. But underneath all of that, there was something else. Something that the Council had not anticipated. There was determination. Humanity had been told they were not good enough. They had been told to stay in their corner of the galaxy and die quietly. They had been told that their nature made them unfit for the stars. They decided to prove the Council wrong. 3 more years passed. The galaxy began to change. Admiral Catherine Shaw commanded the growing alliance from a hidden station in the outer reaches of an uncharted star system. At 71 years old, her body was failing her, but her mind remained as sharp as ever. She spent her days meeting with alien diplomats, reviewing fleet reports, and planning for a war that everyone knew was coming. "Current count," she said during the morning briefing. "How many species have joined us?" Captain Aaron Mitchell, now her senior diplomatic officer, checked his datapad. 43 confirmed allies. Another 12 considering our proposal. The Drexy Collective joined last week after the Council denied their resource petition again. And the Quellan? Still officially neutral. But First Speaker Vethkai has been helpful. Information leaks, supply routes, advice on galactic politics. He's supporting us without committing publicly. Catherine nodded. It was more than she had expected when this all started. The Alliance of the Forgotten, as it had come to be called, was growing stronger every month. Species that the Council had ignored, insulted, or oppressed were finding common cause with humanity. "What about our fleet?" She asked General Marcus Webb. 300,000 combat vessels from all allied species combined. About 60,000 of those are human-built. The rest come from our partners. Marcus pulled up a tactical display. "It sounds impressive, but Council forces still outnumber us significantly. If this comes to open war, we'll be badly outmatched." "It will come to war," Catherine said quietly. The only question is when. On Earth, Dr. Samuel Price had continued his work. The faster-than-light drive was now standard equipment on every human ship. But that was just the beginning. In his underground laboratory, he had been working on something else entirely. We call it the Prometheus device, he explained to director Nino Blackwell, now 80 years old and confined to a wheelchair. It generates an artificial singularity, a small black hole contained within a magnetic field. When activated, it can destroy everything within a radius of several thousand kilometers. Nina stared at the holographic display showing the device's specifications. A doomsday weapon. A deterrent, Samuel corrected. The Council needs to understand that if they push us to extinction, we can hurt them badly in return. We can take their fleets, their worlds, maybe even their home systems. Would you actually use it? Samuel was quiet for a long moment. I hope we never have to find out. But the threat has to be credible. They have to believe we would use it if we had no other choice. Would we? I don't know. That's not my decision to make. I just build the tools. What happens with them is up to people like Admiral Shaw. The news of the Prometheus device spread through the Alliance. Some species were horrified by the idea. Others were impressed. All of them understood what it meant. Humanity was not going to die quietly. Meanwhile, Ambassador Daniel Cooper had never stopped working. Now 73 years old, living in exile on the Quellan homeworld, he spent his days building bridges between species that had never trusted each other before. The Morthax and the Drexy have agreed to a mutual defense pact, he reported to Catherine during their weekly call. That's significant. They've been rivals for 2,000 years. What changed their minds? They realize they have a common enemy. The Council has been playing them against each other to keep them both weak. Once they saw that pattern, cooperation became obvious. Daniel smiled tiredly. Humans aren't the only ones capable of learning from their mistakes. Any news from the Council itself? Nothing official. But my sources tell me that High Arbiter Zixthelion is getting nervous. The Alliance is bigger than they expected, and they can't understand how we're communicating without using their hyperspace relays. Good. Let them be nervous. Nervous enemies make mistakes. The mistake came sooner than anyone expected. The Quellan Parliament had been debating whether to formally join the Alliance. First Speaker Vethkai had urged caution, preferring to support humanity quietly rather than openly defying the Council. But younger members of the Parliament were growing impatient. They saw the Alliance gaining strength. They saw the Council looking weak by a narrow vote. The Quellan Parliament decided to withdraw from the Galactic Concordat. It was the first time in 40,000 years that a founding member had broken with the Council. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Species that had been hesitant suddenly began reconsidering their positions. If the ancient Quellan could defy the Council, perhaps others could too. High Arbiter Zixthelion called an emergency session of the Council. Its plasma form burned with agitation as it addressed the assembled representatives. This betrayal cannot go unanswered, it declared. The Quellan have aligned themselves with a Category 5 threat species. They have abandoned the principles that have kept this galaxy safe for 60 millennia. We must act decisively. Representative Kethmer of the Valaxian hierarchy rose to speak. I'd propose immediate military action. We must destroy the human homeworld and any species that supports them. We must make an example so terrible that no one will ever dare to defy the Council again. The vote was called. 316 species voted for war. The rest abstained. The message was sent on every frequency. In every language, surrender unconditionally within 30 standard days, or face complete destruction. Admiral Catherine Shaw received the ultimatum in her command center. She read it carefully, then looked up at her staff. So it begins, she said. Get me a channel to every allied world. I want to address the galaxy." 3 hours later, Catherine's face appeared on screens across hundreds of planets. She looked old and tired, but her voice was strong. "To the Galactic Council and all species of the Concordat, we have received your ultimatum. We reject it. You classified us as a threat because we refused to forget how to fight. Because we kept hoping for something better. Because we wouldn't accept that our place in the universe was to sit quietly and die. You were right to fear us, but not for the reasons you believed. We are not a threat because we are violent. We are a threat because we never give up. We adapt. We learn. We grow. We find allies in unexpected places and strength we didn't know we had. You gave us 5 years of isolation. In that time, we developed technology you said was impossible. We built friendships with species you dismissed as unimportant. We prepared for this moment since the day you cast us out." Her eyes hardened. "We did not want this war. We wanted partnership, friendship, a seat at the table. You denied us that. Now we will take it. This is humanity's answer to your ultimatum. Come and take us if you can. But know this. We will not go quietly. We will not surrender. And if you destroy us, the idea we represent will survive. The hope we carry will spread to every corner of this galaxy. You cannot kill what we have started." She paused. "To our allies, thank you for standing with us. Whatever happens next, know that you have given humanity a gift beyond measure. You believed in us when the rest of the galaxy did not. We will not forget. To the Council, this is your last chance. Call off your fleet. Accept our membership. Let us build something new together, or face the consequences of your arrogance." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings considered her words. Some laughed. Some trembled. Some began to hope. The war had begun. The human ship Dawn's light was small, fast, and visible to Council sensors. Commander Aaron Midgel sat in the captain's chair, watching the stars outside his window and trying not to think about how far from home Aaron was 34 years old. Before the quarantine, he had been a cargo pilot, flying supplies between Earth and the Mars colonies. He had never expected to command a military vessel. He had never expected to be the first human to travel 400 light years from Earth. He had never expected to carry the hopes of his entire species on his shoulders. "Emergence in 30 seconds," announced Lieutenant Sarah Klein, his navigator. She was young, barely 25, but her hands were steady on the controls. She had volunteered for this mission, knowing that she might never return home. "All hands, prepare for transition," Aaron said into the ship's communication system. "If anyone wants to pray, now would be a good time." The new engine, based on Dr. Samuel Price's design, hummed with increasing power. Space outside the windows began to shimmer and twist. Aaron gripped the arms of his chair as reality bent around his ship. Then they were through. The stars outside were different now, arranged in unfamiliar patterns. They had crossed 400 light years in an instant, something that Council technology said was impossible. "Navigation confirms our position," Sarah reported, her voice slightly shaky. "We're in the Quellen home system." Aaron let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. "Begin scanning for defense platforms and start broadcasting our greeting message." The Quellen were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had helped found the Galactic Council 60,000 years ago. Their civilization had existed for longer than humans had been walking upright. If anyone could tell humanity how to navigate galactic politics, it was them, and they had abstained from the vote. That had to mean something. "This is the human vessel Dawn's Light calling any Quellen receivers," said Lieutenant Peter Hawkins, the communications officer. We come in peace and ask only for the chance to talk. Please respond." The silence lasted 7 minutes. Aaron was beginning to wonder if they should try again when the response came. "Human vessel, this is Quellan Defense Command. Your presence here violates Galactic Council law. You have entered a restricted zone. This is an act of war." Aaron swallowed hard. "Quellan Defense Command, we understand our status. We know what we're risking. We only ask for the opportunity to speak with your government. Please, another pause. Hold your position. Any attempt to approach our planet will result in your destruction." "Understood. We'll wait." They waited for 6 hours. Aaron's crew took turns trying to sleep, but nobody really rested. They were surrounded by alien warships that could destroy them in seconds. The only thing keeping them alive was Quellan curiosity. Finally, a new voice came through the speakers. It was deeper and more musical than the defense officer's voice. "I am First Speaker HFY of the Quellan Parliament. Commander Mitchell, your presence here is unexpected and impressive. First Speaker, thank you for responding. We didn't know if anyone would listen. You crossed 400 light years without using hyperspace corridors. Our scientists believed this was theoretically possible, but no species has ever achieved it. How did you do it?" "Desperation," Aaron said honestly. "When your survival depends on the impossible, you find a way to make it possible." "Interesting." The first speaker was quiet for a moment. "Very well, Commander. I will give you 1 hour to explain why I should not report your location to the Council. If your words have no value, your ship will be destroyed. Do you accept these terms?" "Yes, 1 hour is more than we hoped for." A shuttle was sent to bring Aaron to the Quellan homeworld. He left his crew behind, knowing that he might never see them again. If the negotiations failed, he would die alone on an alien world. But that was the price of being the one to make first contact. The Quellan Parliament chamber was beautiful in a strange way. Living plants covered the walls, responding to sound and movement. The ceiling was transparent, showing the alien stars above. The Quellan themselves looked like giant praying mantises, with long limbs and compound eyes that reflected light in rainbow patterns. First, Speaker HFY sat on a raised platform, surrounded by advisors and guards. "You may speak, human." Aaron had practiced this speech 100 times on the journey. He had memorized statistics and arguments and counter-arguments. But standing here, facing an alien who was older than human civilization, all of that seemed useless. So he spoke from his heart instead. "You know our history," he began. The Council shared it with everyone. The wars, the violence, the nuclear weapons. All true. We don't deny any of it. Then why should I listen to you? Because history is not destiny. Yes, we fought wars, but we also ended them. We created peace treaties and kept them. We built the United Nations, then the United Earth Government. Humans who have been killing each other learned to work together. Aaron took a breath. Yes, we developed nuclear weapons, but we also developed medicine that saves millions of lives every year. We created art that makes people weep with beauty. We wrote music that can change how someone sees the world. He looked directly into HFY's compound eyes. The Council saw our capacity for destruction and decided we were dangerous. They weren't wrong, but they missed something important. The same traits that make us dangerous also make us adaptable. Creative, determined. We don't give up. Ever. Many species are determined, HFY said. Determination alone is not enough. You're right. But let me ask you something. In 60,000 years of Council history, how many species have been classified as Category 5? 3. And what happened to them? 2 were destroyed. 1 destroyed itself. Exactly. The Council expects us to follow that pattern. They expect us to turn on each other, to prove that their judgment was correct. Aaron smiled slightly. But we've had 3 years behind the quarantine wall, and we haven't destroyed ourselves. We've unified. We've innovated. We've developed technology that the Council said was impossible. And now we're here, in your space, asking for help. HFY was silent for a long moment. You are asking me to commit treason against the Concordat. I'm asking you to consider whether the Concordat deserves your loyalty. You abstained from the vote against us. Why? Because I had doubts. About what? The first speaker's compound eyes glittered. About whether the Council was acting from wisdom or from fear. Humanity frightens them, Commander. Not because you are violent, but because you are different. You evolved on a harsh world. You faced extinction multiple times and survived. You never stopped fighting, never stopped growing, never stopped reaching for more. Is that bad? For the Council, perhaps. They achieved stability long ago. They stopped changing, stopped questioning, stopped evolving. You represent chaos, uncertainty, the possibility that things could be different. HFY made a gesture that might have been a shrug. Some of us find that terrifying. Others find it fascinating. And you? I find it hopeful. The first speaker rose from the platform and walked closer to Aaron. The Council has ruled for 60,000 years. In that time, they have brought peace and order to the galaxy. But they have also brought stagnation. Nothing new is created. Nothing old is challenged. The universe is frozen in place. You think humanity could change that? I think you already have. 3 years ago, no one imagined that the quarantine could be broken. Now you're standing in my parliament. 3 years ago, humanity was alone. Now you're asking for allies. HFY tilted his head. You may fail. The Council may destroy you and everyone who helps you. But for the first time in millennia, something different is happening. That alone is worth watching. Aaron felt hope rising in his chest. Does that mean you'll help us? It means I won't report your presence. Not yet. The first speaker turned back toward his platform. Go home, Commander. Tell your leaders what you've learned. Build your alliances, develop your technology, prepare for what's coming. What is coming? War, eventually. The Council will not allow this defiance to stand. But that war does not have to be fought alone. HFY's voice softened. The Quellan have not always agreed with Council decisions. There are others who feel the same. Find them, unite them. Show the galaxy that there is another way. Aaron bowed, a gesture of respect that he hoped translated across species. Thank you, first speaker. We won't forget this. I know. Humans never forget anything. There was something like warmth in the alien's voice. That may be your greatest strength, or your greatest weakness. Time will tell. Aaron returned to his ship. The dawn's light slipped away from Quellan space, carrying news that would change everything. They had found a crack in the Council's armor. Now they had to make it wider. The Battle of the Boundary was the largest military engagement in the history of the galaxy. Nothing like it had ever been seen before. Nothing like it would ever be seen again. Council forces numbered over 2 million ships. 300 species had contributed vessels, from the massive dreadnoughts of the Valaxian hierarchy to the swarm fighters of the Crystalline Collective. High Arbiter Zixthelion commanded the fleet from the flagship Eternal Order, a vessel 3 kilometers long that had never lost a battle in 10,000 years. Against them stood the Alliance of the Forgotten, 300,000 ships from 43 species, with humanity at their heart. Admiral Catherine Shaw commanded from the carrier Unity, surrounded by vessels from a dozen different worlds. She was 71 years old, and she knew this would be her last battle, one way or another. All ships report ready, announced Captain Aaron Mitchell, Now serving as her flag captain, Catherine studied the tactical display. Council forces were advancing in perfect formation, confident and methodical. They outnumbered the Alliance 7-1. By every calculation, they should win easily. They're not taking us seriously, she observed. Should they be? She allowed herself a small smile. Not yet. Execute Pattern Delta. Across the battlefield, human ships activated their space-folding drives. They vanished from their positions and reappeared behind Council lines, inside their formations, in places that should have been impossible to reach. Council ships relied on hyperspace corridors to move. They had forgotten that there might be other ways. Chaos erupted. Ships designed to face enemies in front of them suddenly found attacks coming from every direction. Communication networks collapsed as human vessels appeared, struck, and vanished before defenders could respond. The perfect formations fragmented into confusion. First wave successful, Aaron reported. Enemy formation is breaking apart. Good. Execute Phase 2. The Alliance advanced. Not in the careful, measured approach the Council species considered civilized, but in a wild, aggressive rush that caught the enemy completely off guard. Human tactics emphasize speed, unpredictability, and aggression, everything that the Council had spent millennia training themselves to avoid. But the Council still had numbers. After the initial shock, they began to adapt. Zixthelion reorganized its forces, concentrating firepower on the largest Alliance ships. Slowly, methodically, Council vessels began to find their rhythm again. We're losing too many ships, Aaron said grimly. At this rate, we won't survive another hour. Catherine watched the display. Losses were mounting on both sides. The Alliance was fighting brilliantly, but courage alone could not overcome mathematics. Open a communication channel to Zixthelion. Aaron stared at her. Admiral? Do it. A moment later, the High Arbiter's plasma form appeared on the view screen. Have you called to surrender, human? No. I called to make you an offer. There is nothing you can offer me. Really? Look at your fleet, Arbiter. Look at how your allies are behaving. The Valaxians are protecting their own ships instead of supporting the Morthax. The Drexy contingent is holding back, waiting to see who wins. Your grand coalition is falling apart before your eyes. She leaned forward. The truth is, you're not fighting for survival. You're fighting because we embarrassed you. We proved that your 60,000 years of rule haven't eliminated the desire for freedom. And your allies are starting to wonder if they might be next on your list of threats. Your psychological tricks will not work. They're not tricks. They're truth. And truth spreads. Catherine paused. Right now, my communications officers are broadcasting this battle across the galaxy. Every species is watching. They're seeing a coalition of the rejected standing against the combined might of the Concordat. And they're asking themselves a question. What question? If 43 species can cause this much damage, what could 400 do? Zixthelion was silent. On the display, the battle continued. Ships died on both sides. Neither force could land a decisive blow. You cannot win, the High Arbiter said finally. No, Catherine agreed. But neither can you. Not really. Even if you destroy every Alliance ship today, the idea survives. The example survives. You've shown the galaxy the resistance is possible. You can never take that back. She took a breath. So here's my offer. Ceasefire. Negotiations. A seat at the table for humanity and our allies. In exchange, we stand down, and you don't have to explain to your members how a Category 5 species fought your combined fleets to a standstill. This is blackmail. This is diplomacy. You've just forgotten what it looks like when someone actually uses it against you. The silence stretched. Ships continued to die. Every second cost lives on both sides. Finally, Zixthelion spoke. Ceasefire. 24 hours to negotiate terms. If no agreement is reached, the fighting resumes. Agreed. The order went out. Weapons fell silent. Ships held position, damaged and bleeding but alive. Against all odds, humanity had survived long enough to talk. 20-4 hours later, Ambassador Daniel Cooper stood once again in the great chamber of the Galactic Council. He was 80 years old now, leaning on a cane, his hair completely white. But his eyes were clear and his voice was steady. This time, he was not alone. Representatives of 43 species stood with him. The terms are these, High Arbiter Zixthelian announced. Humanity and its allied species are granted provisional membership in the Galactic Concordat. The quarantine zone is dissolved. The Category 5 classification is removed, subject to review. Daniel nodded slowly. It was not everything they had wanted. Provisional membership meant restrictions, oversight, and limitations. But it was a beginning. Additionally, the High Arbiter continued. The Council acknowledges that the original ruling was premature. Humanity's capacity for violence was considered. Their capacity for adaptation, cooperation, and perseverance was not. This error will be corrected in future evaluations. The vote was called. 241 species voted in favor of the new terms. 171 voted against. The measure passed as Daniel was escorted from the chamber, this time with honor rather than shame. First speaker Vethkai fell into step beside him. "You have done something remarkable," the first speaker said. "In 60,000 years, no species has ever overturned a Category 5 ruling." Daniel smiled tiredly. "We had help. A lot of help. True, but the fire was always yours." Vethkai's compound eyes glittered with something like respect. "I still do not fully understand your species. You are capable of such terrible destruction, and yet such profound compassion. Such deep despair, and yet such stubborn hope." "Neither do we," Daniel admitted. "We've been trying to figure ourselves out for thousands of years. Maybe that's what keeps us going. The mystery of what we might become. Perhaps." The first speaker paused at a corridor junction. "The Council made a mistake in underestimating you. They assumed your past would determine your future. They forgot that evolution never stops." "What do you mean?" "The most dangerous thing in the universe is not a species that knows how to destroy. It is a species that never stops learning, never stops growing, never stops reaching for something more." Vethkai turned to face Daniel directly. "The Council has been static for millennia. You have forced them to change. Whatever happens next, the galaxy will never be the same." Daniel watched the alien diplomat walk away, then turned to face the stars visible through the corridor window. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. Home. The Galactic Council had taken humanity's worst qualities and used them as an excuse for condemnation. They had not understood that those same qualities, directed differently, could become their greatest strengths. The violence became determination. The aggression became drive. The stubbornness became endurance. Humans had been told they were not worthy of the stars. They had proved otherwise, not by becoming something different, but by showing who they truly were. Admiral Catherine Shaw died 3 months after the peace was signed, surrounded by her staff and family. Her last words were reported to be, "We made it. We actually made it." Dr. Samuel Price lived another 20 years, long enough to see human ships traveling freely throughout the galaxy. The Prometheus device was never used, but its existence reminded the Council that humanity was not to be pushed too far. Captain Aaron Mitchell became the first human ambassador to the full Galactic Concordat, following in Daniel Cooper's footsteps. He served for 30 years, building bridges between species that had once been enemies. And on Earth, children grew up looking at the stars with hope instead of fear. They knew that the universe had tried to crush humanity, and humanity had refused to break. The Galactic Council had ruled against Earth that it was indeed their final mistake.